Hello, welcome back to my video blogs. I hope you're ready for some exercise stuff after all the relationship stuff and things like that. Got to mix it up. We're complex beings. Today I thought I would share what I feel safe to share about how to use infant development exercises. And the reason I don't share infant development exercises, which I teach in the Chek practitioner program and in HLC3, Holistic Lifestyle Coach Level 3, is because if infant development exercises are done incorrectly, they will ineffectively program the body to move incorrectly, which only causes a lot more problems, and it makes it much harder or potentially impossible for even a skilled therapist to get faulty motor patterns out of the system. Now, infant development is very, very important because it's the foundation of how we use movement as infants to integrate our musculoskeletal system with our glands, our organs, our brain, nervous system, which is basically integration of the psyche and the body together, which is absolutely critical. The thing I want to point out to begin with is that the infant actually does not have motor control of its arms and legs when it's first born, because it takes about 3 months for the motor nerves that control the arms and legs to myelinate, which means that the coating on the nerves hasn't formed yet. So if an infant tries to move its arm, it can get some movement, but it doesn't have good control. You'll see infants are all over the place because the electrical impulses going through the nerves get sucked out into the surrounding fluids and can affect other muscles. So you see all this kind of chaotic coordination because the muscle that would normally get the impulse, such as if I want to flex my elbow, my biceps will turn on. That same impulse can end up in the triceps, creating sort of a confusion. We're designed by nature that way so that we have to use our core to move at all. And the child naturally, spontaneously is gravitating towards things that are colorful or new objects or things like that, or it gets comfortable in its position and wants to move, which we do throughout our life. And so the infant actually has 6 extremities, the first of which is the head, the second of which is the tail, the third of which is what becomes the dominant arm, and the fourth is the subdominant arm, the fifth is the dominant leg, and the sixth is the subdominant leg. So the infant has to learn to master the use of its core, not only for integration purposes, but because the core is the foundation from which stability for the arms and legs emanates in any functional movement pattern where you're standing on your own 2 feet, such as running, jumping, skipping, throwing, martial arts, almost all sports. Almost all functional activities that we would have done to survive in nature are done on your own 2 feet. We didn't have hammer strength and Cybex and Nautilus machines in our development, thank God, or it would have ruined us. So what happens is the nervous system focuses on core activation, which helps clarify for the infant the difference between its front and its back, its top above the belly button and its lower body, and its right side and left side. So the infant development process integrates front, back, left, right, top, bottom, so that the body can be moved as an integrated system. Now, this movement, this core movement that we see in the infant, we can take a newborn baby, put it on the bed, falls asleep, you come back and it's 6 feet away or 5 feet away, and you go, oh my God, how'd the baby move? And mothers soon realize, or parents, that they got to surround the baby in pillows so it doesn't come off the bed. But you don't see the child getting up and crawling. It's using what's called a serpentine movement. So if you've ever, for example, seen pictures of a sperm swimming, or you've seen a little tadpole, that's a serpentine movement. A snake moving is a serpentine movement. And these movements are woven into us because we are really recapitulations of everything before us in nature. So everything's inside of us and it builds on itself organically. Now, this serpentine movement is very, very important because not only does it pump fluids through the body, but it pumps fluids through the spinal discs which don't have a direct blood supply. They're fed by a process called imbibition, which is a technical word for pumping. So when we move our body, such as walking, running, and jumping, there are pressure fluctuations through the discs, through the vertebral end plates. And if you've ever used a bellows to blow a fire, it's similar to that in that these pressure fluctuations drive osmosis and diffusion, which brings nutrition and fluids in and waste out. So if we lose that serpentine movement in our spine, be it anterior to posterior or laterally or even circularly, what happens is motor segments such as joint complexes start getting locked up, and that starts desiccating or dehydrating discs in the spine and breaking the cartilage down because it's not getting enough movement, which leads to premature degenerative changes in the spine and in extremity joints. So what I wanted to do, just to give you an example and point out, if you study my scientific core conditioning course, you'll see I talk about the sling systems, anterior, posterior, lateral, and deep longitudinal slings, which are all part of this complex mechanism. But when you're watching somebody walk, and you can see their body like mine without my shirt on, you can watch the back as they walk, and you'll see that natural serpentine movement. From a therapeutic perspective, I train the Chek professionals to not only know the anatomy and the neurology and the related physiology, but to look at the subtle energy anatomy, because each part of our body, especially along the spinal axis, is linked to a subtle energy center called a chakra. So a chakra means a wheel or vortex, and that's where we interface with things like the field of our emotions, or the field of our mind, or the field of everything greater than us, all the way up to the cosmos. And for those of you that don't understand chakras, there's a million books on it, and they're heavily scientifically validated. It's by no means an airy-fairy concept unless you're just in the Stone Ages in your own research development and knowledge. So because there's an intimate relationship between thoughts, feelings, and the body and thoughts and feelings, if you have blockage in your body, it can disrupt the flow of life force energy, or chi, or consciousness even, through that part of your body. If you have too much laxity in a segment, it tends to be an indication of too much excitation or movement through that area. Now, I could go on for hours on this to really get it to the nitty-gritty, but the point is that the body and the mind are mirrors for each other, and if you disrupt one element, such as the physical end of it, it will disrupt the ability for a continuity of the flow of energy and information into the body, or from the body and the inner self out into the outer environment, such as in a group of people, or in relationships, or your connection to nature, etc., or even spiritual connection. So what I'll do now is I'll just walk so you can see my spine moving, and you can kind of just look for the serpentine movement, like a snake moving across the ground. Chek professionals were taught how to identify exactly which section of the spine, coupled with which nerve plexus or ganglion, which correlates to which glands and organs and correlates to which psychological functions, and therefore they know which questions to begin asking to more effectively and more accurately assess an individual, to then specifically design a corrective exercise, stretching, joint mobilization, diet, and lifestyle coaching program, which includes mental, emotional elements, which is why it takes quite a long time to complete your training as a Chek professional, because there's a lot to learn. So just watch now as I walk and see if you can pick up that serpentine movement. You can see it from the front as well, but it takes a more trained eye and a lot of practice, but it's definitely easier to see from the back. So, because this is just a short video blog, I can't go into great extensive detail, but I'm driving at the point of why we do the kinds of things I'm about to show you. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get on the ground and I'm going to show you a couple of exercises you can do to assess yourself and look for where you may have lost this natural serpentine movement, and some real simple but effective things you can do to restore it, because this is really the foundation of human movement. This particular movement pattern is kind of like the foundation on a house. It doesn't matter how beautiful the chandeliers are or the stained glass windows are if the foundation doesn't work or is breaking down. So we want to always, Chek professionals are taught to look for the most critical foundation principles, evaluate, reestablish harmony, isolate, and then integrate, and then build up from there. So we start with flexibility and stability, then we go to functional strength and functional power. If you get that sequence wrong and you start doing power exercises or strength exercises when your body's not balanced, then all it does is magnify the imbalance and lead to lots of problems that tends to make people like me plenty of money. So I'd rather make money teaching you how to avoid being in pain and teach you ways to enhance your athletic career and your physical, emotional, and mental stability. So now I'll go down on the mat and show you some techniques. So if you just get in a 4-point position like this, which is one of the ways you can do this assessment, you want to just start by tipping the pelvis forward and start a wave motion, and then you're going to come back into flexion of the thoracic spine and then convert that into extension and then the head and neck. So it ultimately creates sort of a wave-like movement. And it takes a little bit of practice to coordinate the movement. Just think if you were a tadpole on the ground or a snake. Now, a snake wouldn't move like this, but an inchworm would move like this. So if you want a visual, just go on YouTube and look up inchworm on video, and you'll see how it moves. Now, what you're looking for is, where do I have a hard time moving my spine, either anterior or posterior? Anterior would be lumbar extension, posterior would be lumbar flexion, for example. Most people are going to notice the challenge is in their thoracic spine, because we spend so much time seated, head down, arms forward on computers and things like that. People do too much abdominal exercise and chest press type exercise, and so it pulls them down and forward and locks their thoracic spine up. There's a lot of other reasons as well that I don't have time to get into. But basically, what I'm showing you is you're going to just practice this wave-like movement. And put your mind inside your body and inside your spine. And for example, I notice it's very easy for me to undulate my lumbar spine like that. But when I start trying to get that wave to go through my thoracic spine, I really have to focus my mind a lot more. And it's easy to go forward, but it's hard to get the curve to go into extension, which is fairly typical of most people. So then what I would do with that awareness is, let's say, now I need to mobilize that area. So I could take a foam roller. I could start with a smaller one if I wanted to. If the curvature of a 4-inch roller is too acute, then you can use a bigger roller. The 4-inch roller is better for thoracic mobilization because you can get a more focused mobilization on a small area, where a 6-inch roller covers too many vertebrae at once, so it's not as effective. But if it's too discomforting for you, go to a bigger roller. And so what I'll do is basically just feel my spine on the roller and try to get those same movements going. It doesn't have to be perfect or anything. It's just bringing your mind into where the roller is touching, and mind just mobilized, which means it unlocked the facet joints, which is really what I was hoping for, which is just a sort of a self-mobilization. And you want to just see if you can get that normal extension so that you can get over the roller and just lay there without any discomfort. If you have discomfort, then just go to the point of the discomfort and keep it to a therapeutic level, not an invasive level. And then after a few seconds, come back out, and then just drop back in. And give that a few seconds so that the joint capsules can stretch and the ligaments that are tight can stretch. If you need to, you can support your head. You want to try to stay as relaxed as possible. And just work your way through looking for areas of restriction. Now, you also need to work laterally because the spine and all the joints in the body are triplanar, which means there's always some degree of flexion, extension, side bending, and rotation, or said another way, movement in the sagittal, frontal, and transverse planes. All joints do that. Even the knee joint, which looks very much like a hinge joint or purely sagittal, has plenty of motion in the transverse plane and the frontal plane if you actually measure it. So I might go to this side now and lay over the roller and just see, well, how well does my rib cage open up on top and close down on the bottom, which would be side bending left in the thoracic spine. And then I might roll and just see if I can find something that feels restricted, and sure enough, I do. Now, I just finished a nice heavy squat workout before I did this film, so my muscles are like rock hard and pumped up, which is making it a little tighter feeling than it would normally be. I'm quite in tune with my body, and I do these things quite a lot, so I'm pretty hip to what's going on. And so I'll just work through. I'm kind of basically taking a pure mechanical approach here to just finding out where is it that I'm stuck, and can I do anything simple, non-invasive, and natural to free that joint up. And then you will just scour your spine, which means look through it, work through it, and see what you can unlock naturally. Now, a tip for you is if you're eating things that your body doesn't like or anything that's inflaming your body, you're going to find these kinds of problems just keep reoccurring. And an explanation for that is right in my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy. If you look at the piano spine diagram where I talk about the relationship between the organs and the musculoskeletal system. Okay, so once I've done that, now if I find an area, like I said, that's too uncomfortable because there's too much pressure with a small roller, then I do the same thing with the big roller. And I won't bore you with the whole watching and me doing it. I'll just say, now that creates a bigger surface to roll on. It's not going to be as invasive, but if you're more comfortable, you might get better results. And you want to allow your head and neck to relax because that can unlock the neck. And the neck's very, very important because it has a massive control influence over the whole body. So you would just follow that. Now, if you find an area that's just really locked up and you want to get deeper into it, I like to use a medicine ball, and this gives me a little more capacity to focalize a given location, and how hard the ball is going to depend on what you need. I even use stones that are called Shiva Lingam stones that are, they kind of look like big penises, but they're great for doing this kind of mobilization on because of the shape of, they look like a rolling pin with a bulge in it, really. They're not easy to find, but the point is, something as hard as a stone can feel really good if you're conscious and you know what you're doing, and it'll mobilize very focally. So here I can get right down and focus on the costotransverse junction where the ribs and the spine meet, and I can get a better sense of what's happening at a given location. And that actually feels quite good to me to get focused mobilization because my muscles are quite thick and tight back there, so it feels like I'm getting some penetration with something like that. Now, you have to be conscious when you're doing this because if you're just an idiot, you'll hurt yourself and then you'll blame it on the medicine ball or the floor or something, and that's just a very childish attitude, like people saying that foam rollers are dangerous. Well, foam rollers aren't dangerous, they're just tools. By that means everything's dangerous. So, you know, this is what I'm teaching is for intelligent people, not fools. Okay? So after that, you would go back and just say, okay, how does it feel now? And now I can move my spine, especially through my thoracic spine, with much more ease and fluidity and efficiency. And it feels really good. And you can also see if you can create a serpentine movement laterally. It takes a little more mental focus, but you're going to work that movement and see if you find blockage. You can also practice rotating. You can get the head going. And there's no specific exact pattern. Really, you're just trying to move your spine in the frontal plane, which is left to right, sagittal plane, front to back, looking for areas where you don't feel like you can get your mind to control it, and then you can create rotational movements. And that allows you to basically restore this very primal serpentine movement, which is giving you these undulations that give pressure fluctuations that pump fluids through the body and literally pump life force energy through the body. If you study acupuncture meridians, there's actually fluids flowing in them, very fine fluids that are really more like cerebral spinal fluid. And so the pumping mechanisms of the body are very important, and they're very tied into physical movement, which is why when people don't have adequate movement and functional movement, that their bodies start to break down and their psychological health breaks down, their digestive, eliminative, their glands and organs, all of that's all coupled together as one system. So that's something you can use, and it's a very, very good idea to do that as part, of your warm-up whenever you go to the gym, especially if you feel a little beat up or a little stiff, or you've done a hard training session the previous day and your muscles are quite tight. Because if that particular movement pattern isn't working, there's going to be compensations throughout the system, and usually it shows up as things like neck pain, shoulder injuries, back injuries, hip, knee, ankle, foot. But the most common places you get injuries when the core system's not working effectively is the knee and the shoulder, because the body has to compensate for the lack of movement there in the extremities. For example, if you cannot rotate your trunk effectively and you're throwing something like a ball or a medicine ball or swinging a golf club, wherever you lock up, it just moves the rotation down progressively until it gets to the knee, and then you start seeing problems with the meniscus quite commonly, or the anterior cruciate ligament. So hopefully you'll enjoy restoring the serpentine movement. I think you'll find it quite relaxing, quite calming and opening and grounding, and a great way to begin a workout, and also just good general daily body-mind maintenance. So enjoy that. If you want to learn more, you're welcome to get into the Chek Practitioner Program which begins with IMS1 Integrative Movement Science number 1 and progresses all the way up to 5. Or you can go to the Chek Holistic Lifestyle Coach path, which starts with Holistic Lifestyle Coach Level 1, which you can do online, then to 2, which now is also available online or live, and then 3, which is an advanced class where you get really technical and infant development. I teach you, it goes for a whole day, so it's very focused. And then you have a high level of expertise. You can make great money helping people feel great, look great, and living and loving fully. So thanks for joining me today. See you next time.